All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Happy Monday, everybody. The new week is upon us. Today's May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2025. The top story this morning, WTF. What is going on in Taiwan here? The Taiwan dollar is surging 2 days in a row. The Taiwan dollar has strengthened by 5% or more against the US dollar, more than 10% in 2 days. We have not seen moves like this in the Taiwan dollar since the 1980s, and nobody really knows what's going on. There's a couple of prevailing theories that are out there. But look, anytime anything involving Taiwan is in the news, you got to pay pretty close attention. You're talking a lot of geopolitical proximity there, right? It's ground zero for World War III. Plus, it is ground zero for the entire chip industry and the AI bubble. There's a lot of things circulating around Taiwan. So, a lot of people are commenting on Twitter like, why do I care? This doesn't affect me. Maybe not directly, but whatever is going on with the Taiwan dollar right now is going to have major rippling effects throughout the economy that eventually will reach you one way or another. So pay attention to what's going on here. Maybe you can position yourself ahead of what's happened. So look, Friday morning, before we started, or I should say Thursday night, the Taiwan dollar was somewhere around 32.1 Taiwan dollars to the US dollar. We're talking USD, TWD. By this morning, the last time I looked, it was 28.97, more than 10%. Now, let me just quell this one thing that I'm seeing a lot of people are talking about. A lot of people are saying this means war is imminent or that the Chinese are going to move. I do not think that is what's happening here. Capital doesn't run into a war zone. Capital flees from a war zone. It runs away from war because war is where capital goes to die. So I don't think that's what's happening. We would see the opposite effect. We would see a great big weakening in the Taiwan dollar if a Chinese invasion was like imminent in the next few days. Also, I think if we were to see any kind of like risk or any kind of military preparation on the part of the Taiwanese, you'd actually see a weakening of their currency because what would they be buying a lot of? They'd be buying a lot of weapons. Who sells more weapons than anybody in the world? Oh, that's right, us, the United States. And what do you need to buy weapons from the United States? You need US dollars. And so you'd be seeing the Taiwan dollar weakening and the dollar strengthening against it. We're not seeing that. We're seeing the opposite. So I don't think this has anything to do with any kind of military action over Taiwan. I just want to get that out there early on. So if that's the case, then what is going on? Why is it strengthening so much? Well, let's talk a little bit about Taiwan's economy. Taiwan has a huge trade surplus with the United States because of the chips that they sell to us. Tens of billions of dollars every year. So because Taiwan is such a big net exporter to the United States, they have huge holdings of US dollars because they get paid in US dollars for the chips that they sell us. And so Taiwan has large holdings for an economy of their size, very large holdings of US treasuries. I think it's somewhere around $290 billion or $250 billion. They're like the seventh or eighth biggest holder of US treasuries in the world. And the prevailing theory right now, at least among those on FinTwit, is that Taiwanese companies, Taiwanese insurance companies, banks maybe, are dumping US treasuries and running back to their own currency because de-dollarizing, because trade war. And of course, the BRICS guys are all over that because they just love that de-dollarization narrative. So they're kind of clinging to that and amplifying that message. And to be sure, I think there's probably a lot of that going on. I don't know that de-dollarization is necessarily the cause, but right now it's feeding on itself. And so you are getting de-dollarization because people are watching the Taiwan dollar strengthen so much and they're saying, well, I better not sit on these US dollars while that's happening. I better sell mine too, adding to the problem. But I don't know that that was actually what started this snowball rolling. Now, it appears to be what's really contributing to this is the rumor, and I want to emphasize right now, rumor. We're speculating here. Nobody really knows. But there is a rumor that forex manipulation is on the table in trade talks with the United States. And if anybody is going to make a trade deal with the United States, I have a few other candidates. I think the Indians are close. I think the Saudis are close. But if anybody's going to make a trade deal with the U.S., it's going to be Taiwan because Taiwan can't retaliate. Taiwan is dependent on the United States for its very survival. So they just they just are in no position to negotiate. They hold no cards, if you will, if you want to quote the Oval Office blow up. So the Taiwanese are probably going to be among the first to the negotiating table here on the tariffs. And one of the things that is a big deal with the Trump administration is currency manipulation, people artificially weakening their currency to make their exports more attractive. And so the rumor started going around a few days ago that the Taiwanese government is going to allow their currency to appreciate as part of negotiations in the trade talks to get Trump to drop his reciprocal tariffs on the United States. Now, again, that is a rumor. And as a matter of fact, the Taiwanese president is out in the press rather forcefully denying this rumor this morning, saying that's very much not the case. We'll read what he had to say. The Taiwanese central bank is out in the press this morning saying, hey, y'all need to STFU, like, quiet now. Everybody stop speculating. Everybody stop commenting. All you commentators who are talking about the Taiwan dollar need to shut up. As I comment and talk and speculate about what's going on with the Taiwanese dollar. Look, guys, this is the biggest thing happening in the world right now. Can't not talk about it. And since they won't tell us what's going on, all right, we're just going to speculate then. That's all we can really do. All I can tell you, though, it is really moving things. We got news on Friday that the Taiwanese central bank had intervened to weaken their currency, to stop the strengthening. No word on whether any of that happened today other than the verbal comments. But guys, a 10% move in a currency from a major trading partner. I mean, we're not talking about a banana republic here. Taiwan is an island nation, arguably a small country, but it's a very developed economy. To see a swing like this in a currency, 10% in 2 days, that's a massive move. That just doesn't happen. So we're going to look at the chart. We're going to read through some of the comments that are coming from the government officials and see if we can make heads or tails of what's going on in the world here. Other news over the weekend, Warren Buffett is retiring at the tender young age of just 94. He's finally calling it quits. He announced that at Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting. And, all I can say is brace yourselves because end of an era comments are coming from every possible angle in the financial press. And rightly so, Warren Buffett has had an incredibly successful and storied career. He is among the best. He's been doing it a long time. A lot of people came and went during Warren Buffett's tenure. He outlasted all of them. He's nominated Greg Abel to replace him as CEO. That's somebody that he had picked years ago. And just this morning, Berkshire Hathaway's board has voted unanimously to appoint Greg Abel as the new CEO. So he'll be taking the reins from Warren Buffett. And we also got another WTF moment this morning. President Trump has announced his intention to put 100% tariffs on movies made in other countries. How do you tariff a movie? I'm sure somebody is going to figure this out and how they're going to implement it, but movies are filmed all over the world now. You know, some are filmed in California. Then this scene is filmed in New Zealand. That said, you got to film at least one scene in China to get past the Chinese Communist Party censors and be able to have your movie there. So how do you tariff a movie? How do you even decide if a movie was made in another country? And then how do you enforce and execute on those tariffs? I don't know. Look, shoot first, ask questions later, kind of their style here. I also find it a little bit of a head scratcher. The entertainment industry, not really big friends of President Trump at this point. When's the last time Disney put out a movie that had anything even remotely nice to suggest about him? I mean, Disney usually they put that crap on with a paint roller. They slap as many anti-Trump innuendos into their movies as they possibly can at every turn. So I'm having a hard time believing Donald Trump is suddenly this big ally of the movie industry. But he's saying movies made in other countries are a national security threat. Okay, national security threat. We're being invaded by foreign films. Serious stuff here, guys. Serious stuff. We need to increase our defense budget to protect ourselves from, Korean indie pop movies. I don't know. His stories, it's trade war stories, guys. It's hard to keep a straight face when we cover these sometimes. Other news going on this morning, we got Tyson Foods reported earnings. There was some interesting information in Tyson Foods earnings. Looks like the bird flu story largely behind them, but there was something else that really caught my attention. We'll talk about that one towards the end of the show. And Lowe's earnings came in a little bit better than expected, although the stock is down this morning because the CEO's comments are basically saying, look, we're doing okay for now, but the housing market, it's not going to get better anytime soon. And Home Depot said very similar things last week. Well, guys, we got a lot to talk about. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in the markets today. By the way, hit that big like button and that subscribe button if you're new here. So come on back and have your coffee with the melonheads because we do this one every morning. Right now, the S&P 500 is down 43 points, 0.77% lower ahead of the opening bell. The Dow is down about 0.57%, 237 points in the red for the Dow. And the NASDAQ is leading the way lower, down almost 1%, 195 points in the red for the NASDAQ. So we got stocks down pretty much across the board. Meanwhile, the U.S. dollar is weaker again this morning, back below 100, 99.48. That's down by 55 basis points. Obviously, the Taiwan dollar playing a role here in the weakening of the dollar this morning. Looking over at the bond market, we've got a mixed bag once again. No big moves here, only a few points in either direction. The 30-year Treasury, 4.818. That's up 2.3 points. The 10-year Treasury is at 4.325. That's up a half a point. Meanwhile, the 2 years at 3.808. That's actually down 3 points and change. And the 1 month is up a fraction of a point at 4.313. Not a lot happening in bonds. Commodities, on the other hand, is an interesting story this morning. A lot happening in commodities. Gold finally catching a bid after a couple of days of selling off. And when I say catching a bid, it's been like 3 red days for gold. They were pretty severely red, but gold has had just a monster run this year. Right now, $3,318 for spot gold. That's up $77.60 this morning, 2.4% higher for gold. Silver getting in on the action, $32.55 for spot silver. That's up by 54 cents or 1.7% higher. I like the shiny. Meanwhile, we've got copper is up by about 1.85%. Platinum is up 0.75%. Palladium is up a little less than 0.5%. And crude oil down another dollar here, 1.82% lower, 57.26 for June WTI futures. What's going on with oil? Well, the Saudis are at it again. Check this one out. U.S. crude oil prices fall after OPEC Plus agrees to surge production in June. Now, you might think this is an old headline because we had a very similar story a month ago, but no, this is another one. Another big oil production increase from OPEC. They weren't supposed to do it until this morning. They actually got on the phone over the weekend and decided to pull it forward by a day, and they did it over the weekend. I don't know what's going on with the Saudis and OPEC internally. I don't know what's going on with the Saudis and the U.S. as far as trade negotiations go. But as Doomberg rightly pointed out, something historic has happened in oil markets recently. Don't know what exactly it is, but the Saudis are pumping oil like crazy into economic weakness, bringing the price of oil lower. That is something President Trump has asked, demanded, shouted for them to do. Why are they doing it? We don't know yet. But they did it. U.S. crude oil futures fell more than 1% on Monday after OPEC Plus agreed to surge production for a second month. The 8 producers in the group, led by Saudi Arabia, agreed on Saturday to increase output by another 411,000 barrels per day in June. The decision comes a month after OPEC Plus surprised the market by agreeing to surge production in May by the same amount. The June production hike is nearly triple the 140,000 barrels per day that Goldman Sachs had originally forecast. OPEC Plus is bringing more than 800,000 barrels per day of additional supply to market over the course of 2 months. Oil prices in April posted the biggest monthly loss since 2021 as U.S. President Trump's tariffs have raised fears of a recession that will slow demand at the same time OPEC Plus is quickly increasing supply. And you can see that in the chart this morning. Now, look, we got a green candle here because oil has bounced off its lows. We went as low as $55.40, give or take, this morning. That is the second time in a couple of weeks that oil has bounced off of that level. So that appears to be a floor here, around 54.5. But right now, oil at $57.33. If we zoom out on the chart, this is levels that we have not seen since all the way back in, where are we here? Let's get my right cursor here. The last time we were at this level was March of 2021. Before that, February of 2021. So this is the lowest we've seen oil in quite a while here, guys. Keep an eye on this. It's a good bet we're heading lower with OPEC increasing production at an accelerated rate and obviously the economic situation not improving with a global trade war on. So oil's pretty loud here. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is down again this morning, $94,241. It was a pretty rough weekend for Bitcoin. It was down Saturday and Sunday by a few thousand, still above this red resistance/support line. So what's causing the sell-off in Bitcoin here? I couldn't find anything definitive. I suspect this story out of Arizona may have played a role. Arizona governor shoots down plans for a state Bitcoin reserve. The Arizona state legislature had put this bill on the governor's desk that would have allowed the state pension plan to put up to 10% of its holdings into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. The Arizona governor vetoed that legislation, so that may have disappointed the Bitcoin bulls. I would also point out that we are about 10 days away from the deadline for the plan, the framework for the Bitcoin strategic reserve from the government. We still don't know what that's going to look like. So Bitcoin bulls are waiting on news there. But for now, it looks like this Arizona story may have taken it a little bit lower. All right, let's talk about what's going on with the Taiwan dollar. Look at this chart, guys. I mean, this isn't a shit coin. This isn't like, the Lebanese currency or the Turkish lira. We're used to moves like that in those kind of countries. This is Taiwan. This is a very developed economy. All right, big decline on Friday is when it started. We were at about 32.1. And we got slammed down on Friday until the Taiwanese central bank intervened to stop the decline. And then at the open last night, slammed down again. Here we are, 28.8, down 10% in 2 days. And look, like zoom way, way out on this chart, guys. You just don't get moves like this in 2 days. It just does. It's unheard of. Not since the 1980s have we seen anything like this. So let's talk a little bit about some of the reasons people are speculating out there. We've got this one in Bloomberg this morning. Taiwan markets jolted as currency surges most since the 1980s. Taiwan's dollar surged as much as 5% Monday, the biggest intraday gain in over 3 decades. On speculation, exporters are rushing to convert their holdings of U.S. dollars to the island's currency. The local dollar extended Friday's rally to reach the strongest level in about 3 years. Shares in heavyweight Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing dropped, pairing last week's 7% advance on fears the stronger currency will dent its export earnings. This is important, guys. Taiwan is dependent on exports, chip sales to other countries. A stronger currency makes their exports less attractive. Coincidentally, this makes U.S. production of chips far more attractive, although U.S. production of chips is still years away. It's going to take a long time to get those factories built. But a big move like this in Taiwan's currency is going to make the economic case for those new factories in the U.S. a whole hell of a lot stronger. Concerned the deteriorating outlook for the greenback is convincing Taiwan's giant life insurers to hedge their holdings of U.S. dollar debts, gave the local currency extra momentum. I'm seeing a lot of people, especially on FinTwit, are talking about life insurers dumping their U.S. treasuries to run back to the Taiwanese dollar. I'm sure some of that is happening. Is that the cause of this move? I don't know. Taiwan's central bank sought to quell speculation about the moves in the forex markets at an emergency press briefing late Monday. The authority said that the massive appreciation in the currency over the past 2 days was partially attributable to market chatter and urged against irresponsible speculation. Local exporters are panicking and local lifers are underhedged while equity-related outflows have ceased, said Zhu Wang, head of Greater China Foreign Exchange and Rates at BNP Paribas in Hong Kong. The central bank remains the only buyer, but has not been aggressively supporting the market, fueling speculation that currency valuation is part of the trade talks. That's a big one. Now, that's the rumor they're trying to quell right now, but that seems to be what at least kicked this off. One of the reasons exporters are buying Taiwan dollars is expectations the authorities will allow the currency to appreciate to help reach a trade deal with the U.S. Taiwan's government said Saturday its negotiating team had conducted the first round of meetings with the U.S. on May, though no details were released. So insurers dumping, exporters repatriating into their own currency, speculation about forex being on the table in the trade talks. Nobody knows really what it is. But we got this rather forceful denial from Taiwan's president this morning. Taiwan president calls for end to false news about U.S. forex talks. Taiwan's president on Monday called for an end to false news about talks with the United States on foreign exchange rate policy after the Taiwan dollar surged against the U.S. dollar on speculation Washington had asked for it to appreciate. The Taiwan dollar on Monday and last Friday appreciated strongly. We talked about the move that it made after Taiwan's central bank and Office of Trade Negotiation issued denials that tariff talks in Washington last week had involved the topic of foreign exchange. President Lai Ching-te took to the unusual step of weighing in on a video message. Taiwan's trade surplus with the United States is because of soaring demand for tech products the island specializes in, like semiconductors, and Taiwan has never been listed by Washington as a currency manipulator, Lai said, precisely because the cause of the Taiwan-U.S. trade deficit has nothing to do with the exchange rate. The exchange rate issue will naturally not be mentioned in negotiations between Taiwan and the United States. Therefore, I would also like to ask malevolent people to stop deliberately spreading false information, Lai said without offering any names. Taiwan's economy is doing well and people should have confidence, he added. I would also like to ask all my good friends to share what I have reported and to share the correct information with your friends and family. So Taiwan government here really trying to control the messaging around this move in forex, a very strong denial that this is even on the table with the United States. Meanwhile, you got their central bank is weighing in this morning as well. Taiwan Central Bank warns on currency comments. There's that drive, control the messaging, control the narrative. Taiwan Central Bank sought to tamp down speculation on foreign exchange markets, saying market chatter is partially responsible for the local currency's 2 straight days of wild appreciation not seen since the 1980s. We solemnly urge market commentators not to speculate irresponsibly about the foreign exchange market, as such comments can destabilize the market and potentially impact the broader economy, Governor Yang Qilong said after an aftermarket briefing in Taipei on Monday. So, yeah, here I am thinking this is related to the trade war or, large institutions being wrongly positioned. Little did I know, apparently it was malevolent YouTubers commenting irresponsibly that's responsible for a 10% move in the Taiwan dollar. Not so much. He added that market commentary had triggered what he called excessive inflows from exporters and foreign investors to the Taiwan dollar. Yep, it's all my fault. I'm sorry, guys. I made the Taiwan dollar rally 10% with my YouTube commentary. I blame myself. I can do better. I can change. Please forgive me for my forex sins. All right, let's talk about this one here now. Warren Buffett is finally retiring, the end of an era. Warren Buffett will ask Berkshire board to replace him as CEO with Greg Abel. This is 2 days ago. He retired on Saturday, or announced his retirement on Saturday. This morning, the board has unanimously voted in accordance with Buffett's wishes. Greg Abel will be the next CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. An end of an era was announced in Omaha Saturday, as Warren Buffett said he will soon ask the board of Berkshire Hathaway to have Greg Abel replace him as CEO at year end. While Buffett is 94 and Abel was designated as CEO successor in 2021, it nonetheless came as a surprise to the thousands of admiring shareholders gathered for this year's annual meeting to once again hear the investing legend opine on the future of the company. Yes, we're really shocked that a 94-year-old man announced he was going to retire. There's just nobody could have seen this coming ever. Tomorrow, we're having a board meeting of Berkshire, and we have 11 directors. 2 of the directors, who are my children, Howie and Susie, know of what I'm going to talk about there. The rest of them, this will come as news too, but I think the time has arrived where Greg should become the chief executive officer of the company at year end, said Buffett in the final few minutes of the meeting. Berkshire Hathaway stocks actually holding up okay here, all things considered, down about 2.9% on news of a CEO change. $786,000 a share for Berkshire Hathaway, who does not split their stock under any circumstances. Also going on this morning, Trump orders 100% tariff on foreign-made movies to save dying Hollywood. I really don't know what to make of this one. Let's just read through it. U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday announced a 100% tariff on movies produced outside the country, saying the American movie industry was dying a very fast death due to the incentives that other countries were offering to lure filmmakers. This is a concerted effort by other nations and therefore a national security threat. It is in addition to everything else, messaging and propaganda, Trump said on Truth Social. A national security threat for movies? That's a bold call, Cotton. Let's see if that pays off for him. Trump said he was authorizing the relevant government agencies, such as the Department of Commerce, to immediately begin the process of imposing a 100% tariff on all films produced abroad that are then sent into the United States. Look, questions abound here. How do you tariff a movie? How do you tell if a movie is made out of the United States? What about movies that are filmed partially in one country versus another country? A million different questions here. Plus, President Trump has a mixed relationship with Hollywood and with the entertainment industry as a whole. I don't really know what's going on here. This actually strikes me as a little petty. 100% tariff? So are we going to make movies twice as expensive? Well, I don't know if you guys have noticed the movie theater companies recently, but nobody's going to the movies as it is. Making it 100% more expensive? I don't know. And by the way, will this affect streaming? Are they going to charge this tariff on streaming rights of movies produced in the... Again, a lot of questions here when it comes down to actually carrying this one out. Who knows what's going to come out of this one? All right, a couple more. Let's talk about Tyson profits jump as chicken gains outweigh beef losses. So Tyson doing all right here this morning. Their earnings were pretty good. The fact that chicken gains outweigh beef losses. Okay, that's interesting because we saw egg prices last year. Obviously, they rallied like crazy. They've come down rather dramatically in the last few months. It looks like this wave of the bird flu problem is behind us now that Tyson is making a lot more money off of their chicken. So that's part of the story here. But the rest I want to zoom right past, and I want to talk about what's going on in the beef industry. This really shocked me. Tyson lost $149 million on beef when excluding some items in the quarter, more than anticipated by analysts, as the company struggled to pass soaring cattle costs on to consumers. That was the sixth straight quarter of losses for the operation, the company's largest. Its chicken business had an adjusted operating profit of $312 million, stronger than analyst projections. Beef packers lost an average of $115.97 per head of cattle in the first 3 months of 2025, the most since at least 2014, according to estimates from Hedger Edge LLC, a risk management and market research firm. Can somebody who works in the beef industry or the ranching industry please shoot me an email, drop a comment down below, comment on Twitter, comment on Spotify. What is going on in the meatpacking industry with beef? Are the ranchers getting clobbered here? If the meat packers are losing $116 per head, does that mean the ranchers are getting killed even more? Or is the reason the meat packers are losing so much per head because the ranchers are making so much because of the cattle shortage? I don't know what's going on here, but this struck me as way, way out of balance. It's not supposed to be working like this. Anytime you see dislocations like this in the food supply, it gets my attention. So please, somebody who is more connected to the the cattle industry, let me know what is going on here, because that didn't seem right to me. Tyson Foods right now down 4.4% after the opening bell rang this morning, $58.12. That's down by about $2.70. I would point out that year to date, Tyson has had a pretty good year. It's up about 5%, so maybe just giving back some of those gains. And last but not least, Lowe's beats Wall Street expectations as it starts to break out of a sales slump. So it looks like the slump is about over. Pretty good earnings here. Comparable sales were flat to up 1% year over year. That's what they're projecting. Lowe's has had same-store sales declines for several quarters in a row here, so that's encouraging. But I want to zoom in here on what was said over the last few days by Home Depot and Lowe's themselves here. This is what the executives are saying. Lowe's competitor Home Depot's narrowly beat Wall Street's fourth quarter estimates on Tuesday and also snapped an 8 consecutive quarter losing streak with comparable sales. So similar results at Depot. Yet Home Depot CFO Richard McPhail said the company doesn't expect the housing market or mortgage rates to change. Instead, he told CNBC that he thinks consumers will gradually get used to elevated rates as a new normal. And if there's one thing I don't want to hear between now and the end of this godforsaken decade, it is the phrase new normal. I am so sick of hearing new normal. Good God. That being said, Ellison echoed those sentiments on a call with CNBC, saying he expects homeowners and prospective homebuyers will hit a point when they accept the higher rates and decide to modernize the kitchen and finish the basement or build that deck anyway. I can't give you a date, the time, but we think that we're going to see that take place. And when it does, we're in a perfect position to capitalize it. So Home Depot and Lowe's are both kind of saying, hurry up and wait here. They're saying rates aren't going to come down. The Federal Reserve has told us rates aren't going to come down. President Trump wants them to lower. The Fed ain't going to lower. We got the FOMC later this week. There's going to be no cut. The Fed is probably going to say we're not going to cut anytime soon because of the strong jobs market, which is an illusion. We talked about that last week. And of course, you're going to get all of these silly fishing questions from the press pool asking for some soundbite they can use to hurt Trump politically. No big surprises there, but it looks like Home Depot and Lowe's are kind of settling in for this. I don't want to say higher for longer, but just leave it here for longer interest rate environment. And they're saying eventually consumers are going to come around. People are just going to suck it up and somehow eat these higher interest rates. I don't know what they're going to pay for it with, especially if people start losing their jobs. But right now, Lowe's stock is, it's doing all right, all things considered. Down about 0.7%, $1.58 lower, trading at $225.61. The housing market not getting better anytime soon, guys. And I just want to say thank you very much to Pigo's Trading Desk. Says Plaza Accord 2.0 potentially, or reverse currency war to strengthen to draw in USD. Rentier capitalism is one thing people should pay attention to. Pigo, we were talking about this last night. I'm not terribly familiar with the phrase rentier capitalism. I've only ever heard it used in the context of Marxists arguing against private property rights. Like, the lazy owners who just collect rent on their assets and don't do anything productive. Typically, that's used as an argument among Marxists to say that they should be able to control the capital and they should be able to control the land so that they can share in the benefits of the rent. It's not about not charging rent. It's about who gets to collect the rent whenever I hear rentier capitalism used in that context. Now, as far as a currency war, I don't know that this is necessarily a currency war going on. I mean, maybe forex was on the table. It's possible the U.S. was demanding some kind of action on forex from the Taiwanese, and the Taiwanese don't want to give them that. And so the Taiwanese are now out in the press saying, no, we're not going to do it. No, no, no. Even though the market is already doing it for them. So maybe the Taiwanese just didn't want this to happen and it's happening anyway, so they're getting angry about it. I don't really know what's at play there. That being said, the fact that insurance companies may have been inappropriately hedged and exposed to this, that's a plausible explanation there. So maybe you had the rumor of the trade negotiations set this in motion, and then with all these insurance companies and all these exporters exposed to the US dollar and therefore vulnerable to this decline in their own currency. And then they just say, all right, it's time to start liquidating. It's time to start selling. And then it starts to feed on itself. Now, the only reason I'm kind of like hesitant to that is I don't see any big moves in the bond market. If these Taiwanese companies were dumping tens of billions of dollars worth of US treasuries, we'd be seeing interest rates moving sharply higher, especially on the long end of the yield curve today. And we're not seeing that. So I'm still in an I don't know mode here as far as what's going on in Taiwan. But because it's Taiwan and because of the geopolitical implications and because of what it means for the AI bubble, you got to pay attention to what's going on in Taiwan. Whatever it is really freaking important. That much I know. So I wish I could tell you more, guys, but right now all we can do is speculate. And the Taiwanese are out there like, don't be reckless and speculate. So it is what it is. And thanks again, Pigo, for supporting the channel. And Pigo's back again. He says, also, Bitcoin executive order expires today. Hugh Yellen, the strategic Bitcoin reserve that's going to be paid for by printed U.S. dollars. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the strategic Bitcoin reserve, I being Janet Yellen. That being said, okay, let's ditch Yellen for a second because I want to give my own opinion, but I don't want to give it in Yellen's voice. I read that it was the 15th that the executive order expired. So I don't know. Has it been 90 days? We have not gotten any news yet. I know that. Maybe that's contributing a little bit to the sell-off in Bitcoin. Maybe people are getting impatient and they're assuming no news is bad news. I don't know what we're going to get from that strategic Bitcoin reserve comment. I can tell you the last time we were here, Bitcoin sold off pretty heavily because it was largely viewed as a punt. when they, gave 90 days to form a committee to explore the possibility or develop a framework. That was very disappointing to the Bitcoin bulls. So if we get another punt, if we get another like weak sauce announcement, Bitcoin could sell off. If we get a strong announcement that says we're going to put $100 billion into a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve, it's going to rally. It's going to break over 100,000. So Bitcoin is notoriously volatile, guys. Be careful on leverage. That's all I can tell you. Thank you once again, Pigo, for supporting the channel. And First Last says, is it true that Trump is not letting U.S. dollar be sent to Mexico by Mexicans living in the USA? Since last year, Bank of Mexico stopped selling U.S. dollars to control the exchange. I have not heard of that. Is like remittances, like Western Union being banned. I think I would have heard of that. I haven't heard of anything like that. Now, it's possible if the things along the border, if security is tighter and there's fewer border crossings and if deportations are on the rise, you're probably going to see a decline in remittances, people sending their money back home from the States. So maybe we're seeing that decline and the rumors of the ban are starting. And look, rumor mills run crazy these days, and the comments coming out of Washington are crazy these days. So it can be hard to separate fact from fiction. But having not researched this myself personally, I just want to put that out there. I'm leaning towards this as a rumor. I think we would have heard something about this if they had actually banned remittances. I don't know how they would do that. I think that's the kind of thing you'd never get past a judge. Thank you, First Last, for the super chat and for supporting the channel. Nashville Pasta Man says, any comment on Buffett's import certificate idea? That just came out yesterday. I haven't had a chance to really look at it. Import certificate kind of strikes me as like creating quotas. Like you're only allowed to import this much. Just my thought, who controls those certificates? Who gets to decide who gets them? Do small businesses get access to them too? Can small businesses afford to buy them because they can't access the bond market, whereas maybe big companies can afford to borrow money and buy these things at a loss in order to gobble up market share, driving small business out? So anytime we see something like this, it's my nuclear training, Pasta Man. I immediately go to what's the worst thing that could happen? And well, I have a pretty vivid freaking imagination in that department. And so my initial thoughts on this is it gave me the heebie-jeebies, but I haven't looked very closely at that idea yet. Good thought, though. Thank you, Pasta Man. You're ahead of me on this one. I got to read more, apparently. Feel like my eyeballs are going to fall out of my head by the end of the day, but okay, Jack's got to read more. Evan J, thank you for supporting the channel. It says, not sure on cattle, but hair sheep meat breeds up about $150 a head. Buying upgrade for my tiny herd. Ouch. All right, so is this just meat prices finally making their way to the producers? It sounds like, you're saying ouch at the end there. It sounds like good news for you, as in, are you making more or are you having to pay more for your young sheep? I don't know what you call a young sheep, a lamb, I guess. Is that what you say? Huh, interesting. I got to study what's going on in the livestock industry. Things are moving there. I know margins are typically razor thin in that industry. And when I see meat packers losing $150 a head, something majorly is wrong over there. So thank you, M&J, for that anecdata. Maybe I'll shoot you a text. We'll talk more about that. And Will Yang, thank you for supporting the channel. He says, wild guess, CCP buying up Taiwan dollars to dump it later. All right, let's game that out. How does the CCP benefit from that? Let's say they're doing that. First of all, we'd probably be able to see it with the yuan depreciating because they'd have to print yuan and then use the yuan to buy it. Well, they could dump their dollar holdings. They could dump their dollars to buy it. It's okay. It's plausible. I'm still not sure how. Maybe just from the volatility and the chaos they cause in world trade, CCP benefits. Maybe just upsetting the status quo in Taiwan is really their goal there. So, all right, I'd say that is feasible, plausible. No evidence that's happening. I just want to throw that out there. And remember, the Taiwanese government was like, hey, nobody speculate. Well, here we are speculating. So I would say that it could happen, could be happening. But honestly, I'm leaning towards the rumor mill. Maybe somebody in Washington leaked that forex was on the table, and now the currency has strengthened regardless. So it's no longer on the negotiating table because it's already happened. And if there's one thing the Trump administration likes to do in negotiations, it's create their own leverage, create their own currency in the negotiations out of thin air. I don't know, like hypothetically putting 145% tariffs on something and then saying, oh, well, we could negotiate it back down to a more reasonable 50%. And now all of a sudden 50% tariffs seem like a reasonable number when they're not. 50% is crazy, but 145% is even crazier. So it's entirely possible that this was just the Trump administration leaking that they're talking about it in order to create the circumstances where it strengthens out of thin air. That would also match their MO. But again, we're just speculating here. Nobody knows. All we can do is guess. Thank you, Will Yang, for supporting the channel. And thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the Melonheads once again this morning. Don't forget that like button and that subscribe button on the way out. I appreciate the boost for the algorithms. Thank you guys for the super chats and your generosity supporting the channel, as well as you, my magnanimous Melonheads on Patreon and YouTube. You guys rock. Links down below to all that good stuff, should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.